Welcome to our panel. I am Joanna Ossinger, and I cover cryptocurrencies and global markets for Bloomberg News. With me today here at the Future of Money, we have Sheila Warren, CEO of the Crypto Council for Innovation, co-host of the Money Reimagined podcast, and a longtime presence in the crypto space in many capacities, and Kai Pang, the CEO of Indonesian crypto exchange Tokocrypto and honorary secretary at the Singapore Chamber of Commerce Indonesia. Thanks to these illustrious panelists for participating today. Let's start with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and what that's taught us about crypto. What do you see at this point as takeaways for the industry? Where is it succeeding or failing to act as expected, kind of the crypto complex generally? Sheila, do you want to start with that?
I can. Thanks, Joanna. It's so great to be here today. Thanks for having me. I think that we've seen that crypto, like technology, is really a tool. And so we've seen it being used by Ukrainians, the Ukrainian government itself, to basically crowdfund a defense, which is a staggering concept and unprecedented in human history. We've also seen tremendous amounts and outpouring of humanitarian aid from all over the world in support of the Ukrainian people and displaced persons in general as a result of this invasion. We've also seen concerns, I think largely misplaced, about sanctions evasions by Russian oligarchs and other actors on the other side of the invasion. I think that we've been able to provide a lot of evidence and data as an industry to show where the positive effect has really been stronger than the negative effect. But I think what's important to take away for the industry, I would say, is that there's just so many misperceptions about how crypto actually functions and how it operates, what is possible and what is practical to do with crypto at this point in time. And it's been interesting to see different players, different actors in different parts of the world responding to this moment in very different ways.
Actually, Sheila, if you can I'm curious as to what you see going on in places like Afghanistan or Venezuela as well, and if there have been any sort of lessons there that, in addition to what we're seeing in Russia, Ukraine.
Well, I think in general, we've seen that crypto is a tool for censorship resistance. And so there might be actors, powerful actors within any geography, sometimes the government, sometimes powerful forces outside the government, that are looking to oppress or suppress exchange of value. And in doing so, looking to suppress the flow of ideas, I would say, and the ability of people to create livelihoods for themselves outside of what any particular regime deems appropriate. And I would say that I really think that we're seeing crypto as a tool for these freedom fighters to really be able to support their families, to be able to get resources that they need. In many cases, that really is aid. It's coming down to food and water in Ukraine, as I think is widely reported in the press, and I can confirm from what I know. And so I think that we are seeing almost the recognition, I think, in the global economy and the global political environment that this tool, this resource, is something that is proving to be quite important in times of crisis. And so we have to think very carefully, I think, therefore, about what kinds of guardrails we're going to put around it to protect and preserve its ability to function at such a time. I think the sad state of affairs is that we're not going to see less conflict as time goes on, climate change, other kinds of things. I mean, there's going to be more and more competition for more and more scarce resources, and the ability to basically operate at a community level or an individual family level in a store of value and exchange of value is going to be something that becomes more and more important, I think, as time goes on.
Okay, thanks. And Kai, do you want to take that to kind of Southeast Asia and what you're seeing in terms of what crypto does in the region, for the unbanked, for people generally?
Yeah, I think I would taking it back to Indonesia and Southeast Asia. I mean, at times of conflict, especially if we look back at it's still ongoing pandemic that we're still going through. I think crypto has been one of the tools and mechanisms for people to help raise funds in a very efficient manner, especially as we saw during COVID. We do see a lot of movements of people raising funds for purchase of oxygen concentrators, for raising funds globally to help purchase these important healthcare medical devices, to bring them into Indonesia to help the government in solving the lack of oxygen in Indonesia. So that's one thing that we also saw, aside from conflict related, helping to resolve global issues on this. We saw India also had the same trend where people were raising funds through crypto. So it's it's interesting to see how this new form of funding is going to go as people are now more able to raise funds, to efficiently deploy them, and to bring this necessary tools to the regions that they most need.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now one thing that has been in the news a lot lately, the US regulation regarding crypto. So Joe Biden's executive order. So Sheila, can you talk a little bit about what you think at this point? Is this looking good for the industry? You know, what's likely to play out in, say, the next few months, the next year?
Well, the executive order was long awaited. And so it was one of those kinds of things where, you know, every Monday morning, the whole industry was like, is this the week the thing is going to drop? And so when it finally did, I think we were quite pleased as an industry and as supporters of crypto to really see the level of thoughtful attention paid to the industry. I think it's no longer possible anywhere in the world, I would say, but definitely in the United States, to be black or white about this. It's this executive order takes us right into the gray areas and says, look, there are tremendous opportunities and potential here, some of which are very spelled out in the order. There are also risks and challenges, and we know that as well as industry. And so how can we work together? I thought it was so telling that the EO executive order required not just interagency cooperation, but specifically said that we should be, the government rather, should be seeking guidance and support and collaboration with those outside the government. And the assumption being that there are industry experts and others, you know, other experts in the ecosystem that can be helpful here, that can help the government, the US government, really cast about and find the right solution here. I liked the idea in the EO a lot. There is no obvious solution to this complicated industry and this complicated ecosystem, that we do need to be very forward thinking. We need to be accommodating the scope of innovation that is potentially possible here, and not assuming that what we see at the current moment is endgame, right? That this is what we're going to see. It's always going to be financial services. It's always going to be certain kinds of opportunities, right? There's a lot that this could grow to be. And what I took away from it really was we need to be mindful of that, supportive of the industry, but also be really clear that where there are bad actors, you know, we want to make that disincentivize it and make it really hard to commit crimes or anything else, do anything illicit using this technology and using crypto. So all in all, I would say worth the wait is kind of what the takeaway would be. This is not going to be easy. There are a number of reports the agencies have to come up with that will take a lot of time to pull together. And so I think over the course of the next months, you know, probably even next 6 months, we're really going to see a lot of activity, a lot of collaboration, a lot of education, evidence-based advocacy, which is what my organization CCI is here to provide, that I hope will land us in a really positive place and ensure that the trajectory of this technology is able to accommodate all people everywhere and not just be something that's limited to people who are very technically savvy or already very wealthy.
Okay, thank you. And Kai, what do you think? You know, does this do the US developments matter that much for you, or what are you seeing in terms of regional regulation that you are really paying attention to?
Right. I guess for Indonesia and Southeast Asia, one of the key traits or characteristics is that as countries in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, we really do refer to, you know, the developments of the regulations in the Western countries, and a lot of the regulations within Indonesia are really referenced from overseas. Would like to just share maybe one interesting trait that has developed in Indonesia. Since the release of regulations under the Commodities and Derivatives Exchange, whereby crypto exchanges in Indonesia are regulated, volume transactions has grown tremendously since then. The number of users transacting in exchanges have grown tremendously from around 2 million back in 2018 all the way to around 11 million transacting users now in 2022. And we have seen that with regulations being in place, people are more confident in participating in this new technology and the ecosystem in this new technology. People have more trust and definitely more education and awareness. And as industry players in Indonesia, we do strongly feel for the requirements of necessary regulations to be in place, because we do observe a lot of, I would say, scams, a lot of, still a lot of lack of awareness by common people, that it's still running about. Just past few days, we had people come to us and they were carrying pieces of real actual Bitcoin that they thought was actually, could be converted into a digital Bitcoin. So I think, definitely with regulations in place, it's very important for the regulators to work with all the necessary departments to come in and to identify where the illicit actions are actually happening, so that the overall broader customer protection play can come in and help to grow the space. Because the technology, I bet Sheila, Joanna, we all believe in the technology, but the more bad actors that are going to come in and corrupt the place, it's gonna affect the technology. It's gonna make people lose faith and lose trust. And in the long term, if the regulators do not step in to come in and regulate this ecosystem, the people's faith and trust in it will tarnish. Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you. And actually, one thing that I'm curious for your take on, Kai, I believe a few months ago, a Muslim council in Indonesia made a ruling on crypto and said that some of it is forbidden. Is that something that you're seeing as a large concern, or how are you addressing that?
There are definitely concerns, because if this ongoing issue is not properly addressed, right? If education and awareness to the to the Muslim Council is not properly addressed, there will be large repercussions should there be a day whereby they declare that it's haram, that it's not allowed for the Muslim community, which takes up a very, very large population of not only Indonesia but around the world. This will have long-lasting impacts, like as I mentioned just now, people would lose faith in the technology, would lose trust in the technology. So we see it as it's a challenge that we have to face, and it's also an opportunity, because from the Muslim Council, they're specifically saying it's haram if you use it as a form of payment, but there's still opportunities to explore whereby how can this technology be utilized to make sure that it's compliant with Sharia law. So we see that as an opportunity for the business players within Indonesia to come in to help educate the system, to help see how can the Muslim Council fully understand and be more aware of how this technology can actually help the Muslim Council and the community to actually grow together. So I think it has both challenges. If they're not faced, if they're not addressed properly, there'll be long-lasting implications. But also, opportunities where they are open to be they are all open for discussions and they are willing to learn. So yeah, that's our take on this.
And I'll just add to that, Joanna, quickly, that I think one of the biggest concerns that I have around it is, of course, zakat, and the idea that so much of what we were talking about, that aid, the philanthropy flow, there's a lot of diaspora funding from the Muslim community to the region, some of the regions that you mentioned, actually, including Ukraine and also Afghanistan. And so if suddenly this were to be declared haram under Sharia law, then you would actually have a significant reduction in the ability of aid, humanitarian aid, to go via zakat or other mechanisms to regions that are really in desperate need of this kind of thing, and that have actually relied on Bitcoin and other forms of crypto as a means of support for fellow members of the Muslim community. So really commend, Kai, what you're doing. And I think that there's, again, so much misunderstanding, misperception about the technology, about the opportunity, what it means and what it doesn't, what is speculation and what's not. Is it in line with gambling, which is, of course, forbidden? Like, these kinds of things are complicated. It's not easy to understand. But the hope is that as this gets more and more awareness rises around the world, as more and more governments start to weigh in on this, including Biden's executive order, but other examples as well around the world, Modi in India, others, I think we're going to see more and more appetite for really getting educated about what it is by a variety of different actors.
Makes sense. Thank you. So now going on to central bank digital currencies, a big topic of late. China is really in the advanced stages of testing, and there's been a lot of acceleration from other countries that are looking at it as well. So are there any developments that you think have been really interesting on that front, or anything where people that might be developing where people need to be concerned about what's going on, Sheila?
Well, first of all, the EO we were just talking about does talk about the creation of a digital dollar, and the Fed's exploration of that, which is ongoing, has been happening for many years. And now it's a bit out of stealth. There was a big report that got published recently from the Boston branch of the Fed, along with MIT's DCI. And I think that's of course one to watch. I remain a little unsure about what exactly the use case is there, but I think that there are some, and that could be quite interesting to see what happens, especially at a wholesale level. I think that really the big one is the one you mentioned. It's really looking at the ECNY and kind of saying when China really takes that massively outside of Chinese borders, defined as you see fit, depending on who you are, then I think we're going to really see, liftoff. And so already, whether it's Belt and Road, whether it's Chinese investments into Africa and infrastructure, there is a lot of press earlier about, the debt trap. A lot of India and Zambia and others really trying to say, look, we don't want to get stuck in this debt trap with China requiring us to basically take out these loans using digital yuan, and then we're suddenly in this system we didn't necessarily want to be part of. So there's a lot of activity going on there. I will be candid, I don't think it's getting the attention in the West that it deserves. I think that there's just so much going on right now. I mean, who could fault anyone for not having a finger in every single thing that's happening in crypto around the world? But this is one that I think is going to start getting a lot more attention, particularly as China moves beyond its borders, which it's already done, but really starts to scale that extraterritorial activity with the digital yuan. And then I think we're going to see a lot more attention being paid.
Okay, thank you. And Kai, what do you think?
So from my perspective within Indonesia, from what we have been interacting together with the regulators so far, a few things that we have observed is that first, President Jokowi has stepped up to announce that for preparation for G20 summit, which will be in Indonesia, in Bali, Indonesia, he has suggested the idea of an Indonesian metaverse, wanting to create an Indonesian metaverse for the new capital city over in Kalimantan, for Jakarta, and for Bali. Now, as a key mechanism of operating within the metaverse, CBDCs would be essentially something that will be a form of transaction within the metaverse, because transactions will have to be completed in digital currencies. So with that statement, we have been seeing a lot more. We have been seeing a lot more invitations from the authorities in Indonesia. We recently had one with Bank Indonesia, whereby they have announced previously that they were interested, or they have been looking at CBDCs, but we're seeing more and more focus group discussions to discuss on what are the characteristics of stable coins and how can it be applied to CBDCs. But same like what Sheila mentioned, I think it's still a space, or it's still CBDC is still something that's not really put into much attention, especially for Indonesia. I guess within Southeast Asia region as well, they're still looking at how the Western countries and China will be implementing it within their system. But I would say that that with Pak Jokowi, President Jokowi's mention of the Indonesian metaverse, I think there will be more emphasis looking at this. Although I wouldn't come to say that Indonesia or Southeast Asia would potentially be the first movers in this space.
Okay. And now I'm curious, Kai, so about Bitcoin, and I'm not asking for a price target or something, but it's been moving really along with, say, tech stocks, as opposed to acting like kind of a store of value and a hedge. Just for basically since the pandemic started. I'm just interested in if you think there are any implications for people who might want to get into crypto, or how people need to be thinking about Bitcoin as an investment, given that fact.
I think ultimately, people's perception of Bitcoin would change over time. I think the positive correlation between tech stocks and Bitcoin is something that is required at this point in time. As you know, as there are things that's happening around the world that would be, I think that correlation between tech stocks and Bitcoin would allow for people to believe that Bitcoin as a technology will continue to grow, same like how tech stocks are growing right now. So I think this would make it more relatable for people, especially in Indonesia, as they would then see that correlation between how Tesla would be, or how Tesla or Apple stock would be valued, and they would then be able to see that, okay, with Bitcoin, there are ways of valuing it based on how many people are using it, based on the number of transactions are happening on it, and with that mindset, that would then allow for people not to just go in blindly, but to actually be more aware of the technology that's powering behind it, more aware of the use cases that can be used on Bitcoin. So ultimately, I think that correlation would allow for more people to be streamed into being aware of Bitcoin and crypto and to come into that space, because people are be able to relate to it.
Yeah, so basically what do you think is something that is big in crypto that isn't really being paid attention to enough, or you think is going to be hugely important that people just need to be thinking about?
Okay, I think like I mentioned just now, within Indonesia, there's a huge, I mean globally as well, there's huge emphasis on NFTs and metaverses, and everyone's just sucked into the idea of wanting to follow this trend. But I think, if I think about technology, right, metaverse is kind of like the front end, while the back end connections, like the wallets, like the technology improvements on the protocol layers, I think people are not really focusing on that, which I think is key and crucial for making sure that the technology works. Yes, the front end, the metaverses, they all look very good, they look very nice, and it's a nice place to escape to. But ultimately, how to power all this, the key, the integration, how can this technology be integrated into our everyday lives? I think that's what some people are losing focus on. How can they be integrated seamlessly into our phones, whereby they will be integrated into our payment channels? How can they be integrated into the payment for electricity or payment for gas? That's something that people are not focusing on, because I guess that's more of the backend infrastructure that has to be really, there's a lot of existing infrastructure that has to be adapted in order to be in order for blockchain technology to be implemented on them. So I think that's something that is people are losing focus on, and that's something that we should be focusing on.
Okay, thank you. And to wrap it up, Sheila, is this crypto's moment? We've got everything going on in Russia and Ukraine. We've got the Biden executive order. There is so much focus on it, but is this kind of the time for the industry, or are we still not quite there yet?
I don't think that crypto is going to have one moment. I think that crypto is the future. And so I think that what we're going to see over time are many moments where there are societal revelations of the power of this technology and of what it can accomplish. If it's again, if the guardrails are correct, if the enabling environment, both politically, economically, and socially exists to help really ensure this technology progresses along a path that's pro-social. So I don't know that I ever describe anything as crypto's moment. I do think this is one of, I think, a number of moments that have happened over the course of the past 10 years and will continue to happen, where there is suddenly an escalation of awareness of the importance of crypto. But my view is that crypto is not only here to stay, it's really going to be massively transformative in every sector of society going forward. So yes and no, I guess, is my answer, Joanna. And I'm really hopeful that this marks Again, heightened awareness on the part of political leaders of the importance of crypto, of taking it very seriously, of understanding it's not, you can't have a black or white position on this. You have to get into the gray. You have to really understand it before you try to wrestle with it and regulate it, because it's complicated. It's a complicated ecosystem that we're all engaged with. And so I'm heartened by what I see, and I'm optimistic for positive progress.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I think we will leave it there. So thank you to Sheila and Kai for serving as panelists today, and thank you to the audience for listening in.